Good afternoon. I would like to call this meeting of the Calistoga Planning Commission for November 13th to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Noted for the record that all commissioners are present except for Commissioner Cooper, who is excused this evening.
Thank you very much. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, moving on to C, public comments. The public comments is an opportunity to address the Planning Commissions of items of interest to the public that do not appear on the agenda. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Commission cannot consider any issues or take action on items raised during public comment. Is there anyone out there that would like to make a public comment? Seeing nobody, I will move on to D, adoption of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. E, communications correspondence. Staff?
None to report.
Very good. Moving right along. Consent calendar, minutes approval from October 9th, 2019. Does anyone have anything they would like to bring up on the minutes? And if not, do I have a motion to approve? Oh, you're going to, okay.
So moved.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, we're right down to public hearings. Item G. 1, Municipal Code Amendment Z0A 2019-2, consideration of a recommendation to the City Council regarding the proposed amendments to Title 17 zoning to implement recent state legislation regarding accessory dwelling units. Staff.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Our Planning and Building Director sends her regards. She's been working on these zoning ordinance amendments for a while, but unfortunately she can't be here tonight, so she's entrusted me to convey the essence of these to you the best I can. I think I got a pretty good grasp on it. This is, I guess, the latest round in what you might call the annual or biannual ADU updates that Sacramento sends to all the municipalities' way every year or two. Lynn did prepare a PowerPoint, so with your leave, I'll walk you through the PowerPoint and give you the highlights of what we're talking about here tonight. Basically, this is the implementation of state laws that are going to go into effect on January 1. A month or two ago, Governor Newsom signed roughly 18 new housing bills into law, the majority of which have to do with ADUs. They go into effect January 1. That will be the law regardless of what the Commission or the City Council does with these proposed amendments. With that, I'd like to maybe refresh you a little bit on ADUs and what the current law is, and then walk you through the proposals that are in front of you tonight. So just as a refresher, ADUs are residences that provide complete independent living facilities with permanent provisions for living, sleeping, cooking, and sanitation. They're located on the same parcel as a primary single-family dwelling, and they can't be used as a short-term rental. They have to be used for long-term housing, so more than 30 days. So these are not allowed to be Airbnbs. So there's a variety of different kinds of ADUs. They fall into roughly 5 different flavors, I guess you might say. Detached, which is a freestanding structure, something somebody might build in their backyard. Attached, where it's maybe an addition onto a home, but it shares at least a common wall with the main structure. Interior, where somebody has a big house and they carve up a portion of that existing house into a new separate structure or new separate residence. A garage apartment, where you take a garage and you convert it to habitable space, and that becomes a unit. Or above a garage, you pop up and you build a second story on top of a garage. So those are roughly kind of the 5 types that we see and that the law sort of accounts for. Our current regulations, which do comply with state law, or at least as state law is written until January 1, is that 1 ADU is permitted per single family lot. The maximum size is 750 square feet. It can be a studio or a 1-bedroom unit. It does still have certain setbacks it has to comply with, for example, 10 feet on the rear. Replacement parking's only required if the garage is converted. So if somebody converts a garage into an ADU and that garage had 2 parking spaces, the owner of the house has to provide 2 additional new off-street parking spaces. That's the current law. The ADU itself is not required to have its own parking. And of course, a building permit's required, but there's no use permit or specific design review that goes to the Planning Commission. Currently, ADUs do pay both impact fees and, under some circumstances, wastewater and water connection fees. All ADUs pay a little over 12 grand in impact fees. That's our administrative, cultural, recreational, transportation, fire, police, and excise. If it's new construction, so an addition or a freestanding structure or building above a garage, there's about $24,000 in water, wastewater impact fees ADUs currently pay. Under state law and under our code currently, if it's within an existing structure, you're converting a garage, you're carving off a piece of an existing house, you don't have to pay the connection fees. So that can be a big savings for folks in those circumstances. So the most anybody's going to pay for impact fees and connection fees for an ADU is about $37,000. Again, if it's an internal, not new construction ADU, it's only about $12,000. So another kind of interesting type of ADUs that sometimes gets confused here with this is something called a junior ADU. We do currently allow those. They're required to be allowed by state law. They're usually a converted space inside a single-family dwelling. They have limited, emphasis on limited cooking facilities like a wet bar and a microwave. They can share a bathroom with the main single-family dwelling. They have an on-site owner. They have separate entrance. They can have interior access to the main unit. And again, those are currently allowed in Calistoga as they are across the state. So I just wanted to refresh your memory on those as well. So here's the fun part, the new state legislation. So kind of the motivation here from Sacramento is that, ADUs, these are a form of low-cost, energy-efficient housing that can go and get built relatively pretty quickly compared to traditional housing. Over the last couple years, the legislature has pushed through a lot of different bills that have increased the number of ADUs getting built, and I think it's safe to say they want to keep that going. The new bills that we're talking about tonight, or the new laws, will remove more barriers to ADUs, and with the goal of helping to alleviate the housing shortage across the state and maximizing the land that's already developed without eating up new land. So at a high level, these next slides here are the mandated changes to city regs. You'll remember that under our current law, ADUs were restricted to 750 square feet. Now studio and 1-bedroom ADUs can be up to 850 square feet. And if it has more than 1 bedroom, it can actually go up to 1,000 square feet. We can't require replacement parking, so if you recall, I said currently if somebody converts a garage that had 2 parking spaces in it, we could require them to say, okay, well, you need to, if you're going to turn that into an ADU, you need to create 2 additional parking spaces somewhere. Can't do that anymore. For junior ADUs, there's no limitations on the type of cooking appliance, electric service, size of cooking areas, or the wastewater line. So if you recall when we were talking about JADUs a little bit ago, we said, typically they have a wet bar, microwave, small sink. Can't put those sorts of limitations on them anymore. They can more or less have a full kitchen. And if an ADU, JADU is created through the conversion of an existing space, we must now also allow them to do a building expansion of up to 150 square feet to allow for an ingress-egress area, some sort of vestibule, mudroom, something like that. Yet we'd still treat it as an internal conversion, which means they would still get out of paying the water, wastewater connection fees in that circumstance. Sorry, I'm losing my PowerPoint here. See if it comes back. Okay. Yeah, go back. Yes. Did you have a question?
No, I
Okay.
just went.
Yeah, thank you for making sure I don't skip one. So another interesting change is before ADUs were only allowed on single-family properties. Under state law, they now get to be allowed on multifamily properties in some circumstances. At least one ADU and up to 25% of the existing multifamily units through conversion of portions of structures not used as livable space, and construction of up to 2 detached ADUs on multifamily lots subject to height limit and minimum setbacks. What that practically means is if you had a big apartment building and say they had like a meeting space or something, they could convert, one of their non-resident areas, like a meeting space, offices or something, they could convert that to an ADU. And if they had room on the site, accounting for parking and setbacks and all those sorts of fun things, they could actually build up to 2 detached ADUs on the multifamily property as well. I think it's obviously anybody's guess to see how this really plays out in the real world, because this is something brand new. This hasn't been, as far as I know, allowed anywhere in California now. So this will be interesting to see if multifamily properties take advantage of this for sure.
A hypothetical question.
Yeah.
If the multifamily unit are condos,
Right.
so hypothetically you have a fourplex,
Right.
that means one person gets to build an ADU.
Yeah. So right. It wouldn't be 3 ADUs per condo. It would be for the larger property.
So it's first come, first served.
Yeah, and I think that'll be interesting to see how that works out. And if, I don't think it's any secret that with a lot of different laws here, I apologize if my phone's loud, with a lot of these new laws, it's entirely likely that there might be some cleanup legislation that comes through next year. That tends to happen with these when you have a bunch of different bills with overlapping language and things that people haven't really thought of or gamed out, and this could very much be an area of that. So another thing, we talked about fees. We can't charge impact fees for ADUs under 750 square feet. We talked about the $12,000 roughly that all ADUs currently pay. If it's under 750 square feet, no impact fees. If it's more than 750 square feet, they have to be charged proportionally in relation to square footage of the primary unit. Yes.
Okay, so just reading this, it says may not charge impact fees for an ADU less than 750 square feet. However, the next line says impact fees for ADUs if they're more than 750 square feet.
What about the one that's...
Where is 750? Did it get left behind and it's not recognizable anywhere?
Let me look at the actual code language in here, because you're 100% right. Mr. 750 on the dot should be counted.
Isn't it usually more than? Because I think didn't we
Yeah.
have it set at 750 or less was the max
Right.
originally?
It is,
And then
so-
anything over 750 was then going to be charged?
I'm glad you pointed that out. So in the reso at 17.37.040D, the exact language is impact fees shall not be charged for a JADU or ADU that is less than 750 square feet. Impact fees charged for an ADU of 750 square feet or more shall be charged proportionally. So
So 749 square feet is the magic number.
Okay, so because it's a little bit ambiguous here.
I completely
can't say
agree.
Which way does 750
I agree.
go?
That second bullet should really say impact fees for ADUs of 750 square feet or
Or
greater.
Okay.
That's
just
what
a
that should say.
clarification.
So thank you for pointing that out.
Okay.
But it is correct in the code language itself. And then lastly, cannot impose connection fees unless the ADU is constructed with the new single-family dwelling. Basically, if somebody's building an ADU at the same time as a single-family dwelling, we can assess the water, wastewater connection fees. If they're doing it any other time, nope, don't have to pay the water, wastewater connection fees. So I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out how that will work out. So that's something else from Sacramento, though. So let's talk about the effects of these code amendments. So again, specifically, these are to allow an ADU and a JADU on a single property in addition to the single-family dwelling. It increases the ADU maximum size that we talked about, up to 850 for studio and one, and up to 1,000 square feet for more than one bedroom. Allows the conversion of garages and carports, the single-family dwellings, garages and carports, into an ADU without having to provide replacement parking. And it does allow ADUs in multifamily structures through the conversion of space and allows the construction of additional units on site. There aren't a lot of areas where the state has given us discretion in crafting extra regulations on ADUs. One of them, though, is parking for new ADUs on multifamily sites. And the draft language you have in front of you would require one parking space per ADU constructed in a separate structure on an existing multifamily site. Parking is always tight on multifamily properties, and we think that would be a pretty reasonable expectation, that if you're going to build a new completely independent living unit on a multifamily property, that we should have at least one extra parking space to account for that. And so again, these code amendments are going to bring the municipal code into compliance with new state law that again takes effect January 1. And ultimately, it will likely further facilitate the development of ADUs and JADUs here in Calistoga. A couple other points: the inconsistency among the bills do need to be resolved, and I think it's likely that there will probably be some additional cleanup legislation, or they'll come up with some new ideas to send us next year. I did want to point out there was a clause or a sentence in the staff report saying that some of the provisions are going to sunset after 5 years, actually based on some additional conversation with the city attorney's office that Lynn had today. They're probably not going to sunset in 5 years, so you can kind of disregard that. And again, it's entirely likely that we'll be coming back to you sometime next year with some either revisions based on other cities interpreting these codes or possible cleanup from the state legislature. So with that, be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thanks for bearing with me through that. But again, just want to emphasize these laws are going to go into effect January 1, regardless of what this group or the city council does. We do think it would obviously be in the best interest if the code agreed with state law to reduce confusion of citizens and developers and homeowners. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Great. Any yes?
Yeah. One sort of global question: in all of these new provisions, recalling that not that long ago we revised the standards for coverage.
Yes.
Anything that's proposed here still has to comply with our allowable coverage.
Yeah, our allowable coverage, height limitations, are kind of our general development standards. Somebody can't, for example, build an ADU in the front yard,
Right.
for example. So yeah, all those things would still apply.
Setbacks, coverage, the usual.
Yep, absolutely.
So if they would qualify otherwise for a 1,000-foot ADU but don't on coverage, then they would have to make it smaller.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And I would note that our coverage provisions included a little bit extra coverage allowed
Right.
for ADUs specifically.
Well, we actually did it for that reason. Yeah.
Exactly.
Any other questions from commissioners for staff? None. This is a public hearing. I'll open it up. If anyone would like to come forward, please feel free to do so. Yes, sir. Could you come to the mic so we can, thank you very much.
Brian Tank, 1206 Silver Street. Does the owner have to live on either one of the two AD units?
I can answer that question. For a normal ADU, no. For a junior ADU where there's shared things, yeah, the owner does have to live in the main unit.
But it has to be, an owner has to live on the property either way, right?
Just for the junior ADU, not for a regular ADU.
Oh, so you could have, someone non-living there can own the property and have an ADU as a,
Absolutely. All the units could be rentals theoretically.
okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and we will move forward with any additional comments from commissioners.
Does the state have any guidelines for handling parking challenges that arise from this?
There are no guidelines yet for any of these new laws. I think a lot of cities, city attorneys' offices are kind of struggling through this, we are, probably at the forefront of going ahead and being proactive and getting this adopted. I don't think it's a secret that the state's interest is in trying to reduce the parking requirements for these. And so, I think generally speaking, in terms of parking guidance, most of the guidance we would see would be towards requiring less parking for these. I think we have it within our authority to require even more parking than's being recommended here. That being said, I think one space for an ADU is probably pretty reasonable.
I was hearing you though that the state would not allow you to do that.
Yeah, and I want to be real clear. That's the replacement parking. So if a all single family dwellings are required to have 2 off-street parking spaces.
Right.
And so under current law, pre-January 1 law, if somebody wanted to convert their garage or their carport into an ADU, thereby eliminating those 2 off-street parking spaces,
Right.
we required them to replace those parking. The ADU itself didn't have to have off-street parking, but the single-family
Right.
dwelling still had to have the 2.
I understand that.
Under the new law,
Don't.
you don't have to provide that replacement parking.
But you could still require one car for the ADU.
We could, and under Calistoga's current ordinance, we have not required a parking space
Right.
for the ADU.
But under the mandated portion from the state, they would allow you to do that.
They would. The only exemption there is if you're within, I believe it's 500 feet or 500 yards from a certain level of transit stop. None of our bus stops here in town qualify for that. That would specifically exempt those or prohibit us from requiring parking. But again, we haven't required that. What we are suggesting, though, is providing or requiring parking in the multifamily circumstance.
And the parking, just as everything else, has to be contained within the setbacks.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Well, then it's up to one of you to make a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of amendments to the zoning code related to accessory dwelling units.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Very good. Zach, could you turn your PowerPoint on? It's been blinking.
Yes,
So,
of course.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for the reminder.
Okay, great, thanks. Moving on to G2, lot width variance, VA 2019-2, consideration of a variance request to allow a reduction in the required lot width at 1207 Silver Street. Commissioner Wells.
I have to recuse myself as proximity.
Thank you very much. Okay, staff, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. So we have before you a variance application tonight that, if approved, would ultimately lead towards the creation of a new single-family lot in an existing developed neighborhood here in Calistoga. The subject property is 14,400 square feet. It's, let's see, it's roughly a square piece of property. It's a corner lot currently. The requirement for corner lots is that they're supposed to be 70 feet in width. The normal lot width requirement is 60 feet. And in fact, there's also a large number of lots in that neighborhood that are corner lots that don't currently comply with those requirements that are 60 feet. The minimum depth for a lot is supposed to be 100 feet. If this variance was approved and the lot split went forward, you would have a resulting 2 parcels that are 60 by 120 rather than the minimum 70 by 100 and 60 by 100, which is what they would be respectively. With the exception of the reduced lot width, the parcel would comply in all other ways with the municipal code. If a structure were to be built on the resulting lot, it would still comply or have to comply with all setbacks. There would still be adequate space to build a structure on the parcel. At this point, we haven't heard any opposition from any of the neighbors. In this case, since there are a number of corner lots in the general area that are 60 by 100 or 60 by 120 or just 60 feet in width, this would seem like a good case for a variance, and we have included findings that we think would support a variance in this case. The applicant, and I believe some of her neighbors are here. I'll keep it brief to allow her to speak and be happy to answer any questions you may have. One other thing I'd point out is if the variance was approved and the lot split went forward, the remainder lot, or the lot where the home currently exists, would actually still comply with all setbacks too, so we wouldn't be creating any nonconformities here, at least on that lot.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, any question of staff? None? This is a public hearing. Oh, excuse me. Commissioner Apney, you good? Commissioner Abernathy? No, okay. This is a public hearing. I will open it up. The applicant would like to come forward and say a few words.
Good evening. I'm Teresa Butler, for the people that don't know, and I own 1207 Silver Street. And I would like, I'll just read this, what I'm asking to do. So I'm a native Napa Valley person, and I have lived in the Napa Valley almost all my life. In that location, just the last 6 years after my husband's death, I had to downsize and I moved into town. And I have loved living there, but it's a big parcel and the house where I live doesn't quite work for me. So I wanted to, originally that was lot 1 and 2 if you look back in the old records. And I just wanted to put that same division in the, and except it's turned, but it's the same division. And I am planning, and one of the reasons Tim has to leave is because we're already talking about architecture and what I would build there, and I'm interested in building a single-story, I'll be 60 next year, so a single-story home right there. Similar to what Tim has around the corner and my other neighbor, Donna, who's right behind me. It'd be very similar in that keeping style because I think it's beautiful and I love the old historical part of Calistoga. So I personally want to keep it that way. So thank you for considering my variance request. Yeah, and thank you guys for your service, for doing all the work.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Yes, please.
Hi, Marilyn Dank at 1206, right across the street on Silver Street from Teresa. And actually, I would really love to have a house there to look at rather than just a, I mean, it's just a blank piece of land. I mean, there's nothing there, no trees, no landscaping. I mean, not, you know, it's just a piece of land waiting for a house to finish that little street. And I believe that Teresa would keep it within the character of the neighborhood, which, you know, are all these sort of craftsman style traditional homes. And I hope that you consider this variance. I highly recommend.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Donna Homer. I live at 1610 Myrtle Street. I'm right next door. And I just wanted to convey that I'm totally in favor of this, and I hope you vote for it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask commissioners if they have any questions.
No concerns
Okay,
on this
very
one?
good. And I think it's great simply that the neighbors have been, you've consulted the neighbors, they're supportive, and it is in keeping with the surrounding parcels. So I think it's a great opportunity to add to housing stock to whomever, and personally to you, it would be great. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving variance VA 2019-2 for a reduced minimum corner lot width of 60 feet to accommodate a proposed lot split at 1207 Silver Street.
I'll second it. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, there you go. You all set? Okay. Moving on to H, matters initiated by commissioners. I believe there is one that we would like to talk about that Commissioner Abernathy has brought forward, and you've brought some information back.
Sure. Are we referring to the status of different projects?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah, so Commissioner Abernathy, I can't remember if it was the last meeting or a meeting before, you'd asked for sort of an update on different projects that the Planning Commission has heard. Lynn put together a memorandum, you all have copies, and there are copies for the public in the back as well, on the status of some different projects that have come before the Planning Commission in the last year or two. Real quickly, I can kind of walk you through these, and if you have any specific questions, I'll do my best to answer them. 1406 Foothill, this was a single-family home up in the hillside, or excuse me, right off of Foothill. The house had been demolished, and it's a replacement home. Haven't seen a building permit on that yet, but think that might be coming in the near future. This is next to the Francis House. The Napa County Office of Education Preschool, we have received their building permit application, and that's in review, so that's moving forward. 2285 Foothill, this is a house up on the hillside. It's a single-family dwelling. They're also doing an ADU. We've issued a grading permit. I've been up on the site. It has an amazing view from up there, no surprise. And they are working on trying to get the building permit for the house, the garage, and the ADU. The Wilkinsons remodel refresh, they are still fine-tuning the last details of that project. They might be submitting possibly an administrative application to us to make a few tweaks to what you saw. But if it's not in keeping with the details or the spirit of what came before you, it will definitely come back to this body. So we'll keep you posted there. Calistoga Motor Lodge expansion, of course, if you'll recall, there were 2 phases to this, or 3 phases if you really count it all. Of course, the restaurant and the initial, I think, 12 rooms, those are under construction, have been for at least a year. That last phase that we saw earlier this fall, late summer, we haven't received any building permit applications or anything for that yet. Craftsman Inn expansion, this was approved back September. Well, it's been a little while. We haven't seen any building permit applications for that. It has been extended once before, so just to be clear, so staff has the ability to do a 1-year extension on their own for these. So once you get up to that 2-year deadline, you actually do have to come back to the Planning Commission. And it's not as simple as just coming back and saying, hey, we want an extension. You get another bite at the apple in terms of it's a full review and a full application. So the clock is ticking on the Craftsman expansion.
Well, and it's for sale currently.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yep. Branham Tree Care, Joe has moved fast. He's already got a building permit, and that's moving right along. The Solage expansion, this is the 11 guest units. Building permits have been issued for that, just recently, in fact. 1322 Berry Bed and Breakfast, this just came before you recently. They're moving along. I believe they've hired somebody to start work in designing and fine-tuning that parking lot, the parking issue, so we'll probably be getting a building permit for that in the near future. 226 High Street, this was the use permit for the additional height that came before you recently. The foundation permit's been issued, and we may actually have issued the building permit today. I'm not sure. It was getting very close. 940 Highland Court, this was the one rural residential hillside parcel that's in that Highland Court subdivision of, I think it's like 7 or 8 homes. That came before you about this time last year. They have yet to pull a building permit on that one. So we have issued the 1-year extension. And the Lincoln Avenue Apartments, they are still trying to figure out a way to get that thing built. We did just recently issue a 1-year extension on that. So we're hopeful. We're still in talks with them. And a lot of people have asked about it. The Calistoga Vista project, its 2 years expire on December 23rd, and they have not applied to come back to that's the one over, let's see, it's off of Grant Street. It's where the old stables were by the tennis courts. Yep.
The Oak Spring, yeah, the Oak Springs.
Yep, it was around 50 units, give or take.
Correct.
And again, correct, yep. They have not reapplied. They can reapply anytime they want, and we'll, assuming the plans don't change, we could get that back to you very quickly if they wanted to, renew or reapply for those entitlements.
Okay.
I think that sums it up. We'll try going forward to kind of give you periodic updates on these. There's a few things going on.
Really good, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to director's report. Zach, do you have anything tonight?
Yeah, so the only other thing I'd point out is recommend you cancel your November 27th meeting because it is the night before Thanksgiving, and at this point, we don't have any items for you ready. That being said, your next meeting after that will be on December 11th, and keep your calendars clear because we're expecting several items for you that evening.
Very good. Okay. Commissioners, any comments or anything you'd like to say before we adjourn? Nothing? Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to the December 11th meeting.
So moved.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Have a good evening. Thank you.